Who's the baddest bear in gaming, you might ask? Why, it's Banjo from Banjo Kazooie, of course, the Nintendo 64 hit 3D platformer title from none other than the brilliant minds at Rareware. And it is a loved title in many people's histories, as well as mine. I owned an N64, it was my first console, and I'm here to review it today. Before I do, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to get jiggy with some of my reviews, as well as see some of my mumbo magic. I don't know. Well, anyways, why now? Why am I reviewing Banjo Kazooie? Well, it's funny you should ask. I was actually gifted an Xbox Series S from my boys, Alex and Spencer. Thanks, dudes. So, what's the first game that I got when I got my Xbox Series S? Well, I had a 3-month subscription to Game Pass that I was gifted from YouTube. Thanks, YouTube, and for being a premium subscriber. I know it's probably my loss, but I decided to go ahead and download the Rare Replay Collection as well as Banjo Kazooie with it. Banjo Kazooie is a much beloved title of mine. It's actually the first game that Alex and I mapped out over on the Button Mappers. That's where we birthed the map out. It was with that classic 3D platformer and all of the worlds and levels inside of it. And I always appreciate going back and delving into the Banjo experience. Now, I played this back in the day when I was a youngin' with an N64, my first console, but I had more impressions, honestly, from Banjo Tooie, probably from a narrative standpoint, and I also finished Tooie back in the days. Kazooie requires you to collect almost everything in order to finish the game, and when I was young, I wasn't able to do that. I didn't look at walkthroughs, and so I had kind of stopped short around the Click Clock Woods area. But lo and behold, in 2019, I did go ahead and beat it for the first time, collecting almost everything, and now on the Xbox Series S, I've collected everything. I got all the Cheeto pages, I got all the honeycombs, I got the jiggies, I got the notes, I probably got all the mumbo tokens too, even though you can't really see. So I had a grand time going back and reliving and re-experiencing it today. The legacy still holds up. It is one of the best 3D platformers from the era, and even just on the N64, the 3D aspect was kind of like the staple. Like, that was when games were coming to life through like the Zeldas or the Star Fox, and Banjo was no exception. Banjo also brought that Rareware humor and that Rareware style and these really imaginative worlds, as well as this beautiful soundtrack. Everything just meshes so well in Banjo, whether it's Kazooie or in Tooie, and I think that's why a lot of people hold it in such a high regard today. So I am using the N64 footage for this video. I actually have a bunch on reserve, but I did play the Xbox version most recently. I want to do a little bit of a comparison. First off is challenge. So on the N64, it was somewhat more challenging, not in the most noticeable ways. So one thing that happens is every time that you die within a level, your note progress resets. It actually makes it really difficult on some of the later levels. So maybe like Gobi's Valley, if you fall in the sand, that's like an automatic death, and you'd have to go and get all 100 notes again if you want to get all the notes. And again, this is a game where you have to collect everything. Rusty Bucket Bay is another, one of those levels that is just so challenging with some of like the rotating spinner blades and like being able to save that progress on the Xbox version, like say if you die and you don't lose all your notes unless you game over, is a massive boon. It makes it so much easier. Which do I prefer? I don't know. They're both good for their own right. I mean, if you're somebody who just kind of wants to get through the game, the Xbox version is probably the way to go. But on the N64, that added challenge is nice. Now, one thing I do appreciate about the Xbox version is the graphical fidelity. It is beautiful. It's a gorgeous looking remake of the game, and it actually makes some of the things that were harder to see in the N64 version that much more manageable. So in Mad Monster Mansion, there's a part where you get transformed into the pumpkin, and you have to like find the smallest hole in the wall, and it is so hard to make out with the N64 visuals. A similar thing happens in Rusty Bucket Bay if you're trying to go for all the honeycombs. There's like a hole in the wall by where the shark is like swimming around, and so it's having that graphical fidelity is that much nicer as far as like finding everything in a game where it's about collecting it all. Other things that are modified that I appreciate about the Xbox version are the trophies. You know, you get like added benefits from like collection. I think that's nice. I don't think I need it, but you know, it's always nice to show off, I guess, a little bit. And then also they rework some of the dialogue to be more fitting for like, you know, a post nuts and bolts era, which is hilarious in and of itself. You know, nuts and bolts is a joke, but I guess I appreciate that they did make some reference to it in that way. I don't know if I like that they changed the original script from back in the N64 days, but they also do things to add it on for like if you get a gamer picture or something for getting all the Jinjos. Kazooie versus Tooie is a bit of a separate topic, and I alluded to it earlier. Tooie is huge, you know, like so you get Mumbo's Mountain, which is kind of like, you know, a small world within Banjo Kazooie with like a mountaintop, and then there's like Congo, the ape in the corner, and you know, there's an anthill. The first area in Banjo-Tooie is Mayhem Temple, which is just like a sprawling world with like all these ruins and things. And like, that's just one example of like a massive sprawling world. And then on top of that, it just has a darker tone, and the narrative significance is more important. So in Kazooie, you have to save your sister from Grunty because she's trying to extract all her beauty from her. In the second game, Grunty's back from the dead because her witch sisters have brought her back to life, and she's extracting the energy from like all of Banjo's friends and peers, and you see her like kill bottles in the beginning of the game. Like, it's dark, and you really do feel a sense of importance. I found the worlds in Tooie very imaginative. I'm very excited to go back and play it in the near future. How do I view Banjo-Kazooie today? I view it as an absolute classic. It's one of the best 3D platformer games that exists. It's just very well made, and everything's smooth. Like here's the thing about Tooie though, is like, as much as I love it, you do have to do a bit of back and forth after you get moves. Within Kazooie, you could just 100% a whole world if you play sequentially, with the notable exception of Freeze Easy Peak, which you have to come back to for the speed shoes at a later time. But not a big deal, because, you know, everything is restored. Like, you can just come back and race Boggy the Bear afterwards. I love Banjo as a series, as a video game, and, you know, I think that's kind of why people were so upset with Nuts and Bolts, is because, you know, the first two games were just fantastic, and Nuts and Bolts treated it like a joke. Like, it was a disservice in a sense. I highly recommend playing Banjo-Kazooie if you've never played it. It is one of the I can't understate it enough. It's a very well-made 3D platformer with a lot of grace, style, and humor, and well-written dialogue, and it's available on the Xbox or on the N64. So yeah, there you go. That's my view on it. Let me know, what do you think of Banjo-Kazooie? Check out our map out on the button mappers if you haven't already, and we're not done with Banjo, just so you know.